Welcome to another edition of 42 Straight Years In. On my crackhead update, the security here are Dallas police officers. It's three of them. Two of them are regular Dallas police officers, and the other guy is a transit police officer. He works for DART. They caught a lady out here. She lives up on the 6th floor. They caught her out in the parking lot. He said he was doing his routine patrol. He said he flashed his flashlight over. All he could see was eyes. This lady was buck naked in the parking lot, hiding behind a tree smoking crack. Now this lady is a registered nurse at Baylor Hospital, which is about 8 blocks from where I live. And he didn't arrest her or anything. He just made her go back to her unit. Well, yesterday morning, I was standing on the patio, and I seen a pretty chick walk out with a guy. He got in the truck. She walked to the passenger side. He wouldn't allow her to get in the truck. He wouldn't unlock the door. So he drove on off. I saw her with a nurse uniform on. She had a backpack. So she had to walk to work, which would be about, 8 or 9 blocks away is Baylor Hospital. But yesterday afternoon, she was getting off work, and my old lady just happened to be pulling up, and she couldn't get in the building because her old man, he repoed her electronic key. At 4 o'clock here, all the doors are locked. The only way you're allowed in, you got to use your electronic key to enter the building. So she couldn't get in the building. So she went up to her unit. He had the deadbolt on, so she can't use her key to get inside. So she came down. My old lady done told her what unit we live in, and here she is knocking on our door. So she let her in the apartment. And we sit here in the living room just talking. She was telling me her life story and was telling me due to stress, that's why she started smoking crack. So I was telling her a lot of people got problems. I don't mean they turn to drugs. I said we all done went through some things in our life. That don't mean I got to use drugs. I don't see where drugs solve any problems. I see where it create and add on to the problems you already got. So she asked me, she said, are you a psychoanalysis? I said, no. She said, are you analyzing me on the stuff that I'm talking to you about? I said, no. I said, lady, I can care less about what you do in your life. I don't even care. I said, I've been through hell myself. I said, you ever notice you doing all the talking? I ain't told you about all my problems. I said, I got enough problems. I'll make these walls start crying. I said, I done been through some shit in my life. But I'm not discussing my problem with you. You discussing your problem with me. She said, well, I don't like people to analyze me. I said, hey, this is my house. You can analyze your ass out the door. And I said a couple more choice words, but due to YouTube guidelines, I can't repeat those words. Well, anyway, she didn't look like she was making no plans to leave, and I'm not going to allow her to spend the night here. So she started texting her old man. She said that was her husband. Now this lady is making over $75,000 a year, and she smoked crack. Finally, the old man came down and he got her, and she was allowed into her unit. I don't know, I haven't seen her today. I was just left the patio. I see his truck parked out there, but I haven't saw his old lady. Well, anyway, that's my crackhead update. Y'all know what it is. Get your shanks out, and let's get ready to ride. In the last video, I did a segment on Leaky Eye, the professional body snatcher from Houston, Texas. Well, Leaky Eye died October the 8th of this year. He was 72 years old. He died. He had been out of prison 9 years. He served 41 years on 6 life sentences and 9 20-year sentences. But none of those sentences were stacked. Because back in the day in Texas, they didn't stack sentences. You seen guys with 6,000-year sentences, they wouldn't stack. He only had to do 15 years to be eligible for parole. Now, whether you made it or not, but you was eligible in 15 years, including good time. That was 9 years and 6 months, plus your good time equal to 15 years where you would be eligible for parole. One guy in the comment section said, was discussing inmate guards, and he said he thought all inmate guards were buff. The majority of them were. That's who they recruited, was the big guys. You know, it's just a psychological effect. A guy weigh 300 pounds, they feel like he can handle himself, that he can be dominant over the rest of the inmate population. The majority of those guys were big guys. It was some small guys that were inmate guards, but it wasn't that many of them. Majority of them were big guys. Now at the Ramsey unit, we had a turnkey. He from Dallas. We call Shithouse Shorty. He wasn't even 5 feet tall. But House was a bad dude. That was a bad little dude. And he was a turnkey. But majority of them was going to be a large guy. And especially the guy who ran the whole prison. Most of them I've been around, they were huge guys. Ramsey had Burr. He's 6'8", 340. Darrington had Leaky Eye. Leaky Eye is about 6'3" and weighed about 250. He wasn't no small guy. Once we were sitting in the day room at Darrington, and this guy wanted to cap on one of Leaky Eye's fat butt boys. The guy used to be his cell partner. And he said, because at night, man, we could hear somebody saying, hey, I'm not a woman, you can't get me pregnant. You can't get me pregnant, I'm not a woman. We kept hearing that over and over. And so we were sitting in the day room, and this guy, which back in the day was a no-no. You do not get in other people's business. That would get you skinned up in a live flight helicopter. You did not do that. You sure didn't discuss no building tunnels, no inmate guards' business. If you talked about it, you was going to be talking to a guy who you trust and a guy you know very well. You don't talk about it. It was detrimental to your health. So anyway, we was all sitting around the day room. And I was getting ready to play Moon. Back then, I was in my gambling thing, man. I loved to play Moon and Knock. I was good at it. I would do it just to pass time, but I didn't need it as a hustle because I always had money. But I would do it just to pass time to fill the void. Anyway, this guy said, the guy was sitting down. His asshole so sore he can't sit on the bench. He's squatting down. Leaky Eye done leaned on him all night. We could hear that all night. Leaky Eye, we know what cell it's coming from. He live in the last cell. We know exactly where it's coming from. So this guy say, hey man, y'all hear that last night? Who was that saying, I'm not a woman, you can't get me pregnant? He said, who was that saying that? So one guy told him, say, hey man, you better leave that alone, man. He said, no, man, I got to find out what really happened, man. I heard that all night. I couldn't even get no sleep. So, this guy used to be his cell partner. He said, hey, man, did you hear that sound last night? That I'm not a woman, you can't get me pregnant. Did you hear that? The guy said, no, I didn't hear that. Because ain't nobody living in my cell. But studs. It's 2 studs living there. That dude say, man, everybody heard that, man. And I'm not no fool. And I know what cell it was coming out of. He said, man, why you didn't tell me you was like that when you was in the cell with me? He said, man, I don't know what you're talking about. He said, look at you. He said, you can't even sit down. You can't even sit down on the bench. You squatting down. He said, if you was to cough, you shit all over yourself. He said, you ain't even got no lining no more. So a couple guys started laughing. So one word led to another. He just kept on. So this guy got up and left out of the day room. By him belonged the leak eye. The day room door be locked. But he can walk up and tell that building attendant outside the door to unlock the door and allow him to leave out of the day room. So he left. We look around, he leaving off the whole cell block. So he done went down to the leak eye. Leak eye hang out in the warden's office. He done went out and told leak eye, hey, it's a guy down here bothering me about what we was doing last night. So here come leak eye in the beat him up squad. Came up to the day room. He said, he called this guy. He said, hey, come out here, man. We want to talk to you. He said, man, what y'all want to talk to me about? He said, come on out of the day room. He said, we ain't going to even ask you no more. Either you coming out of the day room or we coming in the day room and get you. The choice is yours. So he came out of the day room. Leak eye told him, say, you like to discuss other people's business, how they were hollering. He said, I'm going to see how loud you can holler. So they kicked the shit out of homeboy. And he was out there sounding like Aretha Franklin. That's the life and times of fat butt boys in prison. And one guy discussed in the comment section, he thought all inmate guards were big and buff. 75% of them were. They were big guys. They had some small guys, but you can bet if he was a small guy, he was going to be a tough guy. He wasn't going to be no weakling. Because it depends on what prison you're at. You's at one of the hardcore prisons, the Ellis, Eastham, Ramsey, or Retrieve unit. If you was at one of those prisons, and the warden would see you get beat up, in all likelihood, he's going to take your inmate guard job and give it to the other guy. He didn't want nothing but tough guys. Now at Eastham, they used weapons. That was one of the few prisons where the inmate guards used weapons. At Ramsey, the inmate guards had weapons, but they never used them. They used their bare hands. Because most of the turnkeys there, he's a pretty tough guy. And he didn't use a weapon. At Eastham, they going to use a weapon. As soon as the inmate guards come running, it's a fight, or they got a problem, they got iron pipes, water hoses with lead, blackjacks, riot batons. They had a variety of weapons, and every one of them had a shank. So it varied from unit to unit. And Tim Snow over at Texas Prison System, he sent me a text asking me about inmate guard hustles. Likewise, that varied from unit to unit. At the Eastham unit, the white inmate guards, when a white inmate would show up at Eastham, they got access to all your records. They know your family name, what school they went to, they know all your business. It's inside of your file. And also they know how much money you got. They will look on your file and find a relative of yours and do a little research and come tell you that they are your distant second cousin or third cousin. That way they can extort you. They get you moved on their cell block and they extort you. A lot of time, not only did it extort the guys, he'd become a fat butt boy also. Now his privilege is if he worked in the fields, when he get off work, he ain't got to sit in that hot day room. He can stay out there and run the tiers and stuff just like the inmate guards do. Because inmate guards had inmates who worked for them. You know, they would tell the public that the inmate guards were janitors. Those guys never sweep and mop, do anything. They had other inmates work for them that do all the work. Pick up the dirty sheets, pass out the dirty, clean sheets, or sweep and mop. Because back then, all the cell blocks were spotless. Man, you didn't see a speck of dust nowhere. And they smoked cigarettes. You didn't see one cigarette ash on that floor in the day room. And it's 25, 30 guys in there smoking cigarettes. It's fogged up in that day room, but you didn't see no ashes. If you were smoking a cigarette, you better have an ashtray in your hand. If you drop an ashtray, they had a broom and a dustpan there. You got to go clean it up immediately. Or you go into the unit infirmary with some knots on your head. The choice is yours. And also, most inmate guards would run a store. Back in the day, everything was sold 2 for 1. If you borrowed a bag of coffee, that means you pay 2 back. The next commissary day, if you don't have those 2 bags of coffee, it goes to 4 bags of coffee. They might let you slide and constantly build those numbers up. Next thing they were going to do is go in your cell and confiscate all your personal property and apply that toward your debt. Take your radio, your fan, your typewriter, your tennis shoes, or whatever you got personal. They're going to take it and apply that toward your debt. And also most every prison had the same rule about gambling. If you gamble on your ass, you pay with your ass. So you sitting at the knock table or the moon table and you lose $70 or $80, you know you only got $11 in your cell, you was in worlds of trouble. The guy who you owe the money to, they give him the option on what he want to do with you. And if you refuse, you go into the unit infirmary, and when you come back, the same rules still apply. You still ain't getting away. You try to move to another cell block, they just gonna go over there and tell that inmate guard what you did on that cell block. So there was no running and no hiding. Nowhere you could hide. There's nowhere you could run. No one you could tell anything to. The old prison wardens, they did not want to hear about you being molested by another inmate. They did not want to hear that. Most of them will get real fly with you. They'll say, hey, when you stole that old lady's purse, how you think that old lady felt? You didn't care about that old lady, so we don't care about you. They tell you, get it how you live. So a lot of guys got in traps by borrowing and gambling. And another thing you did not do was gossip. They allowed no gossiping. Now that was a good rule they had. If you were sitting in the day room, sitting there talking to a guy, say, hey man, you see that guy over there? He this, he that. They had a mean trick they play on you. They would go get that guy and bring him over and say, now tell him that to his face. You fail to do so, you probably get your teeth kicked out. They didn't allow no gossiping whatsoever. Now each unit had different policies for inmate guards, but each unit was ran differently. Like I said, at Ramsey, they turnkeys and inmate guards, they all had weapons, but they never pulled them, and I never seen them use them on no one. They got the iron pipes and blackjacks. They got all the keys with brass knuckles on. They got all that type of stuff. But most inmate guards there, they would use bare hands, which most of the inmate guards at the Ramsey unit were black inmates. Where you go to Eastham, the inmate guards, majority of them were white inmates. Each one ran things different. The black inmate guards were way more lenient than the white inmate guards. A black inmate guard, you could, he didn't give a shit about gambling or none of that. You could gamble when you was at Eastham. A white inmate guard, you almost got to go ask if you wanted to play knock. You couldn't just sit over there and start gambling. You got to go ask them. Hey, me and these guys here going to gamble. They either say yes or no, or they would say, if you lose, you're going to pay. And Ramsey had way more privileges than Eastham did. Eastham was 0 privileges at all. Now, the difference was Eastham Eastham unit as big as all the Ramsey unit put together. Eastham unit is 16,000 acres. And they did not work as hard as they did at Ramsey. Ramsey was straight slave labor. I mean, worked like a slave at Ramsey. Well, at Eastham, it was a little different. They come in about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But they got so many work squads where Ramsey only had 2 work squads. The regular field workers and the garden squad. Where at Eastham, they segregated you by race. They had A line, B line, C line. A line was white line, B line was Hispanics, and C line was black line. And they had the garden squad. That's 4 different workforces. And they did not bring them in all at the same time. They'd stagger them about 45 minutes apart. So no one was going to work past 4 o'clock at Eastham. The unit is so big, so many work squads, till they're going to bring you in. Well, Ramsey only had 2 different classifications for work squads. They let white, Hispanic, and black all work together. They just work separately. But we all get on the same trailers and we work in the same field together, black, white, and Hispanic. Now, a guy asked me about Hispanic inmate guards. They had Hispanic inmate guards because they had Hispanic cell blocks. Now, what they would normally do, if they had a problem out of a Hispanic, they would move him over to a white cell block and let the white inmate guards beat the hell out of him. They wouldn't do it themselves. They would let the white inmates do it. That was their policy. So they did, once they integrated, we had one Hispanic inmate guard on the cell block I lived on at Ramsey. His name was Castro. He really was laid back. But they only could be laid back to a certain degree. They all got to put in work if you do something ignorant or violate one of these rules. And each cell block had different rules. It depends on which inmate guard ran that cell block. Each one had different rules on it. You got to know those rules because they only explain them to you once. And the second time around, you go into the unit infirmary with some knots on your head. They didn't do no babysitting, constantly give you warnings. They didn't do none of that. A majority of inmate guards were, like I said earlier, they were big dudes. And majority of the guys who actually ran the whole prison always was one inmate at mostly all the prison who ran the whole prison. Now you go to Eastham, for the inmate guards you had Sonny Evans. He ran J-Line. A lot of people looked up to Sonny Evans. But one of the main guys at Eastham, he was a building attendant. Now he personally worked for the warden. And he got more weight than Sonny Evans does. His name was Jimmy Lampkin. He was a weightlifter. Now he personally worked for the warden. And another guy named Willie C. Potts. This guy weighed about 400 fucking pounds. So he had some big fucking dudes. You know, and everybody thinks size means something. Sure, those guys were big, but they got the warden backing them also. So that make him double dangerous. He can assault you or kill you. He gonna get away with it. If you assault him, it was serious consequences to pay. Now it was some of them who got stabbed here and there. Few got killed, but it wasn't enough to change the system. If they would have been attacked everywhere, they would have changed the system. We wouldn't have never needed no federal judge. Even when the federal judge declared it unconstitutional in 1979, it still took 4 more years. They had inmate guards. They never got rid of them. 4 more years, we still seem like the violence increased. And they knowing they're going to have to get rid of these fools. But that was the only system we knowed about was inmate guards and slave labor. So guys really didn't look down on you. You had a life sentence and you was an inmate guard. A lot of those guys did not want to work out in the field in the hot sun picking cotton and working from sun up to sundown. And they got a life sentence. They didn't want to do that. I had the opportunity to join the inmate guard crew if I'd wanted to. I made me a vow. I ain't going to never do no shit like that. Never. I said, well, whatever it is, I just have to deal with it. Work in the fields, pick cotton, and whatever. I'm not going to even do no crap like that. You know, a lot of them got retaliated on the outside. Had one at Ramsey, his first day out. His name was Freddie Brazil. He got killed at the bus station in Houston. He was raping this guy's little brother. When he got out, was waiting on him. They killed him with a 12 gauge right at the bus station downtown Houston. One out of Dallas, they went by his mama house, shot his mama house up. So his mama complained about, hey, whatever you doing in that prison, they're attacking me out here. So those guys did get attacked. It just wasn't enough of them getting attacked. That's why the system existed. And it was no games. It was every man for himself. And that compounded the problem, because it really, if all inmates had unity, we could have destroyed them in one day. Killed them at every prison one day. It'd have been over with. It'd have been a wrap. They cell doors stayed open 24 hours a day. Early in the morning at breakfast, 3 o'clock, we coming out for breakfast, they laying up in their cell sleep. It's only one inmate guard woke. It's some turnkeys in the hallway, but it's one inmate guard on that cell block woke. He's called a night alley. Now he's up, getting ready, waking everybody up for chow. You can easily run in their cell and kill their ass and got away with it. We wouldn't have got away with it, but you could have got rid of them. That's enough ranting and raving. I got to head to Walmart. Y'all keep your shanks ready. And watch out for the crackheads. Like one commenter say, yeah, crackheads are human also. Sure, I know that. But they just the butt of the joke right now. No, ain't nobody forcing them to smoke crack. So they accept whatever come with it.